is the Prosperity Podcast. This is the podcast of the South Island Prosperity Partnership. We're the Economic Development Agency for South Vancouver Island and Greater Victoria. I'm Bruce Williams. We're going to talk today about the recovery that we're facing and aiming toward after this COVID-19 crisis. We're going to try and talk as often as we can to people who have had a circumstance where economic recovery was required due to some other sort of a challenge to the economy. And Mike Fisher is with me right now from Christchurch, New Zealand. Mike, how are you?
Yeah, good. Hey, thanks for having me on, Bruce.
I think when people hear Christchurch, New Zealand, they know exactly what we're going to talk about today. And that, of course, was the episode of February 22nd in 2011, when a devastating earthquake hit your community. Tell me about that day in your life.
Yeah, so life-changing, that's for sure. So I've told the story a few times where I was actually sitting on the toilet at the council building, about to go into a meeting. Sorry to lower the tone straight away. But you know, obviously you're preparing about to go into a meeting, and the building I was in shook, the roof caved in, wind glass smashed on the windows, and sort of ended up running home, like, so getting out of the building with colleagues and sort of making sure people were safe there, and then with a couple of other colleagues who lived around me, just running home and getting, my boys were young then, and finding my wife and my boys half an hour later sort of carrying under a table. So it was pretty emotional and traumatic, and I think seeing the dust rising from left and knowing that it was you know, it was definitely going to be loss of life and things were never going to be the same was, yeah, as I say, very traumatic. So a crazy day. Sometimes you forget, and then sometimes you have these moments where you think, oh my goodness, we have been through quite a bit, and it's changed significantly. Yeah.
So yours was an instant circumstance. This thing with COVID was built up over a number of, depends on who you talk to, a number of days or a number of weeks or even months. But your catastrophe was just bang, right away, and it happened. When was it quite clear that the nature of the devastation was going to destroy the economy? How soon did that take effect?
Well, I think we had a precursor earthquake in the September before, which was outside of the city, and it looked like, you know, there's a little bit of damage. We thought, right, we're going to recover from this. The February one was close to the city, significant damage, and I think we had previously thought, well, imagine if it had happened right in the city, and, you know, we lost the buildings and, you know, businesses and homes and all of that sort of stuff, how devastating it would be. So we, you know, there's a thought of we're okay, we'll move on. But the February, me going home and looking back over the city as walking over a bridge and seeing the dust and seeing buildings down and thinking, oh, this is terrible. And then the day or so following, being in the council and being part of the response, the immediate response, and seeing the city then cordoned off, the army brought in to manage it, seeing the homes, the devastation, that, you know, you knew that it was complete and utter, turn the economy up on its head, as well as the social fabric and the cultural fabric of the city. So it was at the time, and then just seeing that next day, seeing, you know, how everything was affected terribly. So it was pretty soon after.
So you're a tactical urbanist. It's the actual title that and you've been to Victoria speaking on that topic too, have you not?
Yeah, so I haven't called myself a tactical urbanist. It's probably a nice term in a way, but it's probably I would be an urbanist, I suppose. My background's planning, and I've been to Victoria and I loved it. It was a place. I was actually speaking at a conference in Vancouver and got the opportunity to come across and discuss some of the Christchurch response and recovery, and also some work I did in Adelaide. And Victoria's an amazing part of the world, and I think at the time it was more what in Victoria, if there was an earthquake, some of the stories, as opposed to a sort of a pandemic. But yeah, my background's planning and urbanism, and particularly tactical responses. I think after the Christchurch quake, we look to experiment and start to grow things, facilitate things that can get stuff happening quickly. And that's the tactical urbanism side of things, and start to build a bridge to the future and look at possibilities, really.
So you were in a circumstance where the buildings collapsed, the infrastructure collapsed, the economy was fine until that happened. This time around, your buildings and infrastructure are fine. It's the economy that's collapsing because of COVID. Can you draw some comparisons between the recovery process then and the recovery process that will happen now?
Yeah, I think, and it's probably the philosophy and the intent behind it that I'm looking at now as to how to approach and hoping that we, as a community here in Christchurch and others around the world, sort of start to approach it. I think, obviously, dealing with the trauma first and understanding the nature of, there's exhaustion, and and I work and also manage an indoor market here. The trauma for business, with their families and trying to work out, well, what is the future? Do I have a future? How do we get into the stage where you're looking at opportunities? And that recovery phase in Christchurch was, okay, how do we move into an opportunity stage where we're, understanding and working with people and empathetic to what's going on in their personal lives and the exhaustion that they feel, and then getting into, right, how do we support and help facilitate the opportunity and look at the possibilities sort of in this. And I think that's a key part of that. I think part of the COVID, as well as coming over to Christchurch, that is similar, sort of looking at, well, what is the intent philosophy behind a lot of that. And then I think the leadership required I was in government at the time in Christchurch and in the council, and that it had to take a very facilitatory space, or make that space, and have quite a really decent work on partnerships with the business sector, non-for-profit, and within neighbourhoods and communities. I think, again, that's completely translates to the crisis we find ourselves in now, is how do we facilitate and encourage, how do we build these amazing collaborations and partnerships, sometimes unexpected, between people you might not usually work with or think to work with. But that's the part, what happened in Christchurch, and what I think is part of that intent philosophy about what can happen now.
So you're fairly confident, I would think, that there's a bit of a roadmap in place already as to what you need to do to take these steps toward recovery.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I think for Christchurch, there's and probably other places that have gone through crises. Obviously, Christchurch, it's it's a modern city that has gone through something and had to rebuild in the last few years, and sort of maybe a modern economy, if that's such a term. But so there's a lot of lessons out of that, probably, for others. And I think there is a roadmap in terms of, the good and the bad that we've done here. I mean, there was some, I think some stuff that wasn't so good in terms of maybe in some cases the government trying to control too much and not facilitate and not unleash the sort of the energy and creativity that was in communities. But learning from what we've done here and starting with and building these relationships and starting that experimentation and starting to really unleash new potential, new opportunity as part of what should happen sort of out of this current crisis for COVID. Yeah.
What was surprising or really engaging or really enlightening, uplifting almost from the last? What did things appear that no one really anticipated, or that showed great response that wasn't expected?
Yeah, totally. And I think that was part of capturing the imagination. A lot of the things that happened were these unexpected collaborations. A lot of the arts, working with the non-for-profits and some of the business sector community, started to get together and shape these quite creative, responsive projects. And that's probably the tactical side of it, where these groups and people work quite nimbly to start up a container shopping in Christchurch, build out a shopping container. So the fabric of the city's gone, but to think, how do we build back something that will back a community and retail hub and food, and right in the central of the city. That was amazing. So that was the business enterprise group started that up and worked and facilitated it, and right up to the date, I think it was crazy, but it happened, and it drew a whole lot of people back. And then arts groups worked on a pallet pavilion with architects and the private sector and non-for-profit, so that gave an event space. And so these unexpected collaborations, and I think that was part of it, is these people getting together, possibly didn't usually maybe knew each other, and then said, well, what can we do together, all these skills that we've got to look at this in a different way and think about the opportunity. And again, that was the creative stuff that actually Christchurch started to get known for. A lot of that creativity that came out of it amongst the devastation was quite remarkable, really.
So did that shipping container model continue? Is it still there?
It has finished. So the market that I manage now sits on the site where the shopping container mall, but some of our tenants were tenants that some of the trade are now gone into this more permanent sort of bricks and mortar, but some of the containers then moved up just north of here, a few hours up the road to Kaikoura, where there was an earthquake a few years ago, and again their little town centre was devastated, and some of those containers we reused there to be a sort of a sanctuary, I suppose, and a sort of that incubation for small business there as they look to rebuild. And I think those models of it's going to be a time of nurturing small business and getting people back on their feet and incubating and providing that space where government and private sector are going to need to work together on how do they help provide that support for those businesses, and how does the businesses then connect to the arts community sector who have a lot of creative ideas and are quite nimble. There's a lot of potential energy there, and it's sort of grappling it and harnessing it and putting it in the right direction.
Yeah, because recognizing opportunity that appeared during the recovery, is a part of sustaining that recovery, is it not? To recognize those elements and find other ways to put them in place. If you ever come back here, by the way, and I hope you will, there's a number of little food operations up and down Vancouver Island that are in containers. There's one on the Inner Harbour in Victoria called Red Fish, Blue Fish.
Right.
Write it down. We'll take you there for fish and chips if you ever come here. But yeah, so the opportunities recognized through the recovery last time. What if that can carry into this now?
Yeah, so I think it's certainly talking about the ships that are required. I think doing stuff by yourself and working by yourself is exhausting, and these situations like this COVID crisis is exhausting. So building and looking for partnerships and being as part of the foundation for it. So that opportunity will take groups of people working together on things across different sectors and industries to make things work. That's what some of the best examples out of Christchurch were where that happened. And I think then the groups being given the tools, supporting their energy and given the tools. For government, it might be having to relook at all the policies, rules and things that they have that may have worked, COVID, and think they might not be, might do different tools, and actually going through those is another that are starting can work that say, oh, look, we're going to have a different environment now, different economic environment, different Main Street. People aren't quite feeling comfortable potentially getting out. So how are we going to do planning mechanisms? There's quite a bit to do to get that collaboration going and starting to work on those tools and levers that should be the foundation for developing the opportunity. And so not squashing ideas. I think very easy for ideas to be thrown out. And again, some of the things that came out of Christchurch, you said you're going to build a container shopping mall. People probably would have laughed at you, but it happened, in the pallet pavilion and a whole lot of other things that happened. Wouldn't happen normally, but were opportunities and ideas that weren't squashed and were nurtured and grown and facilitated and helped and funded, and then amazing things happened out of them. So I think those are the sort of things that need to be the foundation for this, seeing the opportunity and the recovery.
Since there's a little bit of a feeling maybe among you and others that you say to yourselves, well, we've kind of been through this before. We've got this. There's a fair amount of panic across the planet right now, with a number of places who have not faced anything like this of this scale, either for a long time or never. But you kind of got this, don't you?
Well, we've through quite a bit in Christchurch. We've had the earthquakes, a few years ago, as well as we've had fires in the city. We've had, unfortunately, the terrorist attack, and there's a lot of there's been a lot of trauma in the city, but you see a remarkable, sort of, I suppose, resilience. I'm not quite sure of the word, but it's that where people are able to say, hey, look, if we can get together and we can work together on things, and we can be facilitated and supported and encouraged, we can get through this. And I suppose we've seen that, and it's been demonstrated in front of our eyes. I suppose hopefully that can be a bit of inspiration to other cities and around the world to say, when you feel like you're on your knees, there is the opportunity and the hope in it, but it takes some things and working together, different ways of working to actually get to the point where it is realizing those opportunities.
Yeah, I hope there's no sense of crisis fatigue setting in, for lack of a better term, I guess. Mike, to wrap this up, there's something that we do when we convene meetings like this with people. We ask the question, when we move out of this and as things change and we create a new economy, what do you see more of and what do you want to see less of? So you would have seen that the last time around, that some elements of the culture and economy were sort of purged by the crisis and didn't emerge on the other side. But based on what's going on right now, and the world in which you were living a month and a half ago, in that going forward, what do you want to see more of and what would you like to see less of?
Great question. So I think in terms of me, and some of this comes from my background being in government and now, in the private sector running a market and consulting work, I think I want to see more collaboration. I think the experience in the earthquakes where these different players and partners from across the different sectors came together, whether you're a teacher or whether a fireman or whether you're an artist, whoever it was, your ideas, and you could collaborate and you could get stuff done. You could be in business, whatever it was. And I think there seems to be significant division across the world and growing division. And we watch some stuff happening in the US from here, just wondering what on earth's going on, some of the division. I think I would want to see more collaboration, understanding that, when you can bring people together to work, and yes, they will have different backgrounds and way of looking at the world, but actually we're going to have to solve this current crisis together, other looming crises and things that are going to face as humans on the planet. So it's that collaboration. And then probably less of, and to that, I suppose stuff I would like to see less of is probably the, it's the, and some of it happens online, the yelling at each other, where that stuff that causes division, the lack of understanding and empathy and understanding people's situations, which then, causes a stake in the ground to two parties. And you need healthy debate and you need critique and criticism, but done in a way actually is fostering things to get better as opposed to causing division. So that's what I would want to see less of. So they're sort of related. Because as I say, that some of the key lessons were the partnerships in Christchurch, the collaborations that happened, the good leadership when it did occur, which was bringing all these things together to say, hey, look, we can move on, and we, whatever idea you've got, let's work on it and see where it goes.
Yeah, we've had answers a lot of the time that people say, well, we want less of this sort of needless consumerism. We don't need that anymore. And a lot of people saying we need to be a little more friendly to the planet. I understand we have an opportunity to do that right now. And somebody has also said all of this kindness that we're showing each other right now, we need more of that going forward. We need to keep that happening. Mike, thanks for your time. We really appreciate it. Would you like to offer up a website or anything?
Yeah, so I have a, thanks, Bruce. It's been great to talk. Thanks for the opportunity. And I have a little consulting business, Urban Tacticians. So you can just look at urbantacticians.com on the web. And also the work I do, I manage the Riverside Farmers Market in Christchurch. So again, hopefully one day you'll be able to come down and others will be able to visit Christchurch and see some of the amazing local food producers that I work with down at the market. So yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to chat, and all the best to everyone up there. And in the future, I'll be up and enjoying it. Bring the family and and see how it's going. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Christchurch and Greater Victoria are about the same size, by the way, roughly 400,000. So we're all through this challenge together. To reach us, we are the South Island Prosperity Partnership. My email connection is on there if you want to talk to me. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll talk to you next time.